This is our last session. We are going to talk best practices, and we have got Miss Johnston, a super amazing high school English teacher with us here today who's going to talk about some of the things that she's been doing in her classroom. And I'd really love to hear from anyone and everyone that has some great ideas. I know we're all on this like virtual teaching thing together, and it's new and kind of scary. So anything that you have found that's working, we definitely want to hear what that is. So let's see. So first of all, Miss Johnston, she's awesome. She teaches 9th and 11th grade English at Alamogordo High School, and she's going to talk to you about simplicity today. So I'll stop talking and let Miss Johnston go.
Thanks for having me, Caitlin. Caitlin and I share office hours at the end of the day, and so she listens to me quite a bit and helps me troubleshoot and try to make things more simple for me and for my students. And so I remember last spring when this first started, it was a lot, I think it was easier in a way just because I knew my students, as we all knew our students at that point. But I do remember thinking about how do I make this Google Classroom setup as simple and consistent and easy to follow as possible for my students. Because when you're in the classroom, if I used to put all of my units together. So if I was teaching a specific short story, it would be underneath that particular short story's title. And then I remember in the spring, I was listening to, I think his name is Josh Swabash. I can double check that. But I was listening to his conversation about rethinking your Google Classroom for remote learning. And the first thing I did was put an assignment in my old Google Classroom, and I had set up new Google Classrooms. And I told my students that they had to join the new Google Classroom. And within that Google Classroom, I decided to set it up by weeks instead of by units of study, because I knew that that would be much more clear for them to know exactly which lessons they needed to get done and complete. So this year, I followed the same example. I put the weeks, the dates, and after the first week of teaching, Caitlin, if you want to go ahead and scroll to the next slide. This is what I saw. And I thought to myself, this is way too much. And I know that in our own, physical classrooms, we have to set up protocols, routines. And so that's been my puzzle. That's been what I've been trying to make more and more simple in Google Classroom, the routines and the consistent pieces of the material and lessons that I put forth for the students. And so again, looking at this, I thought that is way too much, especially when I received emails and communication from parents and students who hadn't enrolled that first week of school. There were glitches with different computers, and as we all know, technology is up, then it's down, it's slow, it's frustrating sometimes. And so I thought to myself, if I were a student looking at this, and then I had 7 other teachers or 7 other subjects on top of this, that is a lot. So I started to rethink things, and I was trying to put slides and materials for each day, the slide deck with the lesson and then the materials underneath each. But again, it was still a list that looked it looked just like this. So fast forward to week 4. Now this is a little bit better, but it's still a lot to look at for, I think, a student. And I don't want a student to feel overwhelmed and just give up before the lesson even starts. And I think that's been my biggest fear from the beginning. And so this, about Friday afternoon, I was really excited to go to office hours with Ms. McCoy, because I couldn't wait to share that Nearpod. There's now an assignment in Google Classroom where you can automatically add Nearpod lessons. So I thought, okay, I always put a weekly introduction video in my journals. That's an assignment because it's good for them to continue writing. But then the next 6 posts, the top 3 in the middle, those are the materials for the live lessons, the Nearpods. And then underneath are the student-led Nearpods. So if a student missed a day or they needed to go back and revisit the material, the student-paced materials would allow them to do that. And then the live lessons, of course, they're much more fun if there's participation. But still, a little confusing. They still were having trouble finding the proper materials. And then I think it was 2 days ago, Caitlin, we were talking and we came up with a plan, especially because I wanted to assign them one way to do the Nearpod, whether it was live or student led. But I didn't want to assign all of those 6 individually, because then it looked, again, that huge list of the to-do list for the students. And so the next idea, which I'm really excited to share,
because it's so much more simple.
I love looking at that, and I hope my students do as well. And so I decided to include, so of course the week introduction, it's a really short video. I try to keep them at the most 5 minutes, but for the most part, it's about 2 to 3 minutes, just kind of explaining the week. And then of course the weekly journals, because writing is good for them, whether they believe it or not. But then underneath, there's 3 assignments, and within each of those topics, those headings, there's an option for them to join the live Nearpod or the student-paced Nearpod. And so even thinking if you're not using Nearpod, I think by putting the materials, everything they possibly need for that day in that one tab, I just think it would make things so much easier for kids to follow, and not be so overwhelmed. And that led me into, okay, I've gotten, I think, my kids situated. So now it is also important for you, and you can slide on, Caitlin. That's where, when Caitlin and I were talking about all this, what was my goal? It was simplicity for my students, and it was simplicity for myself, because I know that I'm not alone when I say I've never been so exhausted, stressed out. It's been hard. And so we have to make things easier for ourselves as well. And you can scroll on.
And Sarah, you were talking about like the review list too. So if you have so many different assignments, your review list just gets really, really long, and that doesn't help you either, right?
No, right. And for students to sift through, for teachers to sift through. Yeah. And we have an example. I don't know if you all have looked at the student side of Google Classroom, but it is daunting if there's way too much to do. So thinking about myself, now that I've taken care of Google Classroom for my students, I was thinking of how to make things easier for me as a teacher. And I decided to come up with a slide deck. And I'm a big Nearpod user. I use it all the time. And Caitlin, if you want to go forward. I think that the other piece to the simplicity is consistency. The students need to know what to expect. So I started thinking about a template and a pattern for my lessons. And this is something, it's not perfect by any means, but it is something that I went ahead and put together. And each week there's a consistent pattern to it. There's always each lesson, there's different material included. But there's always this slide, and you can click, this is a hyperlink, so if you wanted to see the slides, and Caitlin, you can, I don't know if.
Yeah, so if you click on just this box, it'll bring you to her slides, which are awesome, and very consistent, which is the thing here, right? So just tell me which slide to go to, Sarah.
Okay, so this is what I try to have up when class starts. I usually try to have it up about 5 minutes, ahead of time, and I'll have, myself muted and my face not there, but they know to go into Google Classroom and that class will begin in a few minutes. And this is nice, I think, for students to see, because again, they know that you're there. This is the consistent slide. They're getting used to knowing what to do and how to start class. And I always have that just to start off. And then the next slide, I always try to post an agenda. And this one's a little bit lengthy, but there's a reason for it for next week. But I do try to have an agenda for them that they can always go back to. And of course, if they need help, just a reminder of what they need to do. And you can keep scrolling, Caitlin. I think the next, I always try to, wait, go back up one. I always try to have the learning goals, because our district we use the fundamental 5. And so there always needs to be an objective and a closure, and then the standards listed. And we're very fortunate. Our boss is allowing us at this time to use our Google Classrooms as our lesson planning, like lesson plans that we used to turn in each week. And so he has requested for us to always have objectives and closures and standards. And so I thought, well, by putting it in the slideshow and always having it at the start, it'll remind me and it reminds the students what we're supposed to do for the day. And then I think if you keep scrolling, so then a lot of these other slides, they're set up for Nearpods. Again, I changed the content, but I don't change the consistency of them. And I think if you slide towards the end, Caitlin, probably like the last 3 of them. Oh, I keep a website. And so I always have that slide included in there just in case they need to go and find any of the tutorials I try to put up there. And I do try to update the website, but of course I am a little bit behind right now, but with assignments and such. And then the next slide. Oh, thanks, Ignacio. So this slide I put up if they're individually working, just to remind them to definitely ask any kind of questions. A lot of times the way that our district has set up we have a block every other day. Well, we see our evens one day, odds the next. And so it's about an hour and a half, and I always give them the opportunity to stay on or ask questions, or if they need to get off and do other things for the second part of the block. But I always have this up so it reminds them that I may be working on something else, and so if they have a question, they need to reach out. And then the next slide I put together is another place, like another.
Sarah, I was going to ask the same thing. So our question is, what is a nod hand?
Oh, I can teach you. Okay, so a nod hand is an extension, and I learned this. An app can stand alone. An add-on is anything that you add on to some of the Google apps, and an extension is something that Google hasn't come up with or put in their apps yet. So if you look up, can I type on this? Google Nod extension, and it's so great. I taught the kids how to do this, and a lot of them knew, but there's little emojis, and so you can raise your hand if you have a question, or they say bye sometimes, or a thumbs up. That's just a way that it's been more interactive for them to kind of say, I do understand, I don't understand, please help me. So that's what a nod hand is.
And it's a way to keep things simple, because then the students are interacting with you that way. They can raise their hand, or, can you hear me now? Thumbs up.
Yeah, and there's fun little emojis that pop up every now and then, the way they communicate. So it's been fun. Oh, and then of course I do take breaks from time to time, and it's good for the kids to do that as well. So I always encourage them to take a break, but I do put this slide up just so they know that I'm coming back. But I tried to have all those different slides in place in my slides at each week, just so I can copy them and make sure I always have them. So that's just the way I've tried to make things more simple for myself as well.
And if you're just joining us, we are in this Nearpod. You can go to join.nearpod.com and put in the code up here in the top left corner. Then you can interact with our presentation. So we're going to the next slide?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So these are just some of my thoughts I was coming up with as I was talking to Caitlin the last couple of days about this presentation. I am a huge Nearpod fan, like I shared before, because I like having the ability to post the live and the student-paced lesson. I mean, of course, there are sometimes some connection issues with Nearpod, but it really does, for me, cover every situation that could possibly arise. And as fun as the activities are in Nearpod, I am still very mindful of overwhelming the students, because I know I get really excited about new technology, but again, we have to focus on the fact that we would like them to learn our lessons, and not necessarily, the really cutesy things that might take, 20 minutes to teach them. So I try to give them maybe a new Nearpod activity or a new tech tip, like maybe once a week, but it really depends on the content. Like I try to focus more on the content, because I know sometimes in this world we get focused on, oh, let's do this and this and this. But, you know, in reality, I have to rein myself in and think, let's, again, simplify this for me, for my kids. Oh, and another, I thought about this a lot over the summer. There are so many different platforms, and again, thinking of keeping it consistent and simple, I think there might be 4 that I've chosen to stick with, even though I love Actively Learn, I love Quill, I love, you know, there's so many, but I really had to be mindful and to streamline it and to get them used to using 4 for English. So I know one of them is Khan Academy, and one is, of course, Google Classroom, because that is a platform in itself as well. Common Lit, I love Common Lit, and and Apex is our digital online curriculum. And so I did kind of sift through all of what is out there to try to just narrow it down. And again, thinking of, you know, 7 different teachers and 7 different subjects, you know, just trying to keep it as easy for them to navigate as possible.
Right, and you might think of like elementary school kids where their parents are sitting beside them helping them. And if you have too many platforms, maybe you have too many sign-ins, and the parents are having trouble keeping up with that too. So at the high school level, you know, you have 7 or 8 different classes, and that's so much to juggle just for a student. But think about those littles too, and the parents or the grandparents that are helping and trying to get them signed into all these different platforms. So pick the ones you love and stick with them, and throw out the rest.
That's really good advice. I've heard from a friend who taught with me, and she's online with her little one now. She took the year off for this reason, and she said there's a little boy in her son's class, and he's in a daycare. And so whenever he's trying to log on to the next platform, and I think he's in 1st grade, he goes to the workers to ask for help, and they're like, I don't know. So that's a really good point too. Oh, and I took this from one of my students' Google Classroom page, and this is another reason why I know that we have to simplify and back off just a little bit, or at least I do, because again, here's this list of to-dos, and that's, gosh, we're just in 4 weeks. I think I took that picture or that screenshot 2 days ago. So again, just looking at that and talking to my students, and if they see this in every single class, every single subject, that's really overwhelming.
Right, and as a student, you look at this and you get to the point where it's like, okay, this list is too long. I give up. It's too hard, you know? Is that all you had to say about that one, Sarah?
Yeah, and even just, I've reached out to some of my students when they haven't been turning things in, and they have said, I'm just so overwhelmed, I don't even know where to start. So I mean, I know it's a lot, but even just reaching out and emailing, I think that personal touch that shows them, okay, it is okay to ask where to start, how to do this. Yeah, I just wanted to be as organized as possible, because I know if my space isn't organized in my classroom, I don't feel like I'm being successful. And again, getting rid of all of the, for lack of better words, it's been a long day, like just kind of that frivolous maybe, or just all the fluff. I really wanted to make sure that they were focusing on content, especially because we don't have as much time with them. So I've tried to eliminate. I think that's it.
Yeah, so thank you so much for sharing. I think that's one really thing. I mean, it's so good to think about is like how you're presenting your information to your students. And I know we talked about Google Classroom and we use those screenshots specifically, but think about that, you know, if you're using Canvas or whatever it is you're using, think about that and how you can apply that to your virtual classroom. You don't want it to be too overwhelming for your students. So thank you.
Can I share one more thing?
Yes.
So if you all have not visited Slides Mania, I think Caitlin, you're the one who told me, visit Slides Mania. They have some really wonderful templates, and that's where I get a lot of my slides from, that are really easy and appealing to see. So it's a fun site to visit to come up with a template for yourself. That's what I did.
And it makes things easy for you because they're already pretty and done. All you do is add your content. It's great. So this is where we want to hear from you. We're all kind of in this new virtual learning thing together. It's new, it's different. I know in the spring, even the spring to now is very different because we're teaching students new content, right? So tell us what has worked for you. I want to hear what, even the smallest thing, you know, I was telling Sarah today, just in our office hours, I did like a silly little document with one of my clubs, and they added little emojis, and it really was just one of those activities that was simple. It was not a difficult activity, and the amount of interaction that I got with my kids, I was like, oh, that worked. And so I think, and Sarah, you probably felt the same thing. Like, we've just kind of gone, oh, you know what, that actually worked. So tell us, what are the things that you're like, wow, that worked, I want to hear. So you can share, you can type in the chat, or you can share on the board. We want to hear from you. So you haven't started yet, so you're still kind of gathering ideas. Awesome, Tammy. I hope you got something from this presentation, and we talked about a lot of different tech tools over the course of this series. So I'm going to show you where you can find more information too about what we went over. So if you want to keep sharing with us, you can just type them in the chat. I'm going to show everyone this page because this has a few things. So first things first, we've got this resource guide. This resource guide has all of the sessions, so all of the recordings from the previous sessions. It has a lot of different fun things on there. You've got some Nearpod coupons here. You've got some tutorials to help you use these tools that we talked about. And yeah, that's what's on here. So that's there for you to keep. When you click on that link, you can bookmark it, so you can save it or put that link in your notes, wherever you might keep that. The other thing that we would love for you to do is to take this survey. So if you'll go ahead and take this survey now, I am going to pull the names from that survey because we have some books to give away. We've got 2 copies of Edu Protocols, and I've got a whole lot of stickers to give away. So if you want to go ahead and complete that survey so your name's on there, we're going to do those drawings. And if you want any one-on-one support, we've got this link for an after party. I'm going to call it our after party, where you can come and ask questions, and we can walk you through whatever it is you need. Hopefully we can walk you through whatever it is you need. So go ahead and take that survey, and I'm going to get my little spinner together so I can give away some of those prizes. We're going to do 2 spins to give away a copy of the book. And if you don't have a copy of the book, oh my gosh, it is the best book I think out there. Survey's not working for you? Let me see if I can put it. I'll put a link in the chat for the survey. Okay, there is the survey. I have too many tabs open. I do that every day. I'm like, wait a second, which tab was I on? Oh, it is Edu Protocols. Put that in the chat too. He talks a lot about different things that you can do with any age group, and incorporating tech as well. And it is one thing that I go to quite often. I thought I had a picture of it somewhere. Field guide. Oh, thank you, Sarah. Okay, Sarah put a link to it. It is so great. All right, so let's go ahead and do that drawing. So we're going to pick 2 names. Okay, so 2 names. Let's see. And Patty's actually here. Awesome. So Patty, I'm going to be emailing you to get an address to send that to. All right, that is awesome. Let me make sure I've got. Okay, one more. Are we ready? And Janella, I don't think, is Janella here today? No, but she has been to every other one. So awesome. Thank you all so much for coming.